They made me sleep in the basement the night before Thanksgiving, thinking I was just the poor, useless relative. I just stayed quiet while they partied upstairs. But the next morning, my grandpa called. He told me he had booked a penthouse on floor 48 and that I was not to tell a single soul. They thought I was nothing, but that room key unlocked a plan to expose them all. My name is Allison Barnes. I am 32 years old, and I am a project manager at Larkspur Urban Developments. My job is to take chaos zoning laws, concrete pours, union disputes, and millions of dollars in financing and turn it into order. I build affordable housing. I build community centers. I build things that last. I am precise. I am competent. I do not tolerate ambiguity, which is perhaps why I dread Thanksgiving. The drive to Harbor Glen, Delaware, is always the same. The sky is the color of wet concrete. The GPS guides my car off the main highway and into the winding, opulent streets of the Voss-Hart enclave. My aunt, Loretta Voss, lives in a house that is far too large for her, a modern monstrosity of glass and white stone that always looks cold, even in summer. This is my mother's family, or what is left of it. Since my mom passed, I am the outlier, the obligation, the stray branch they cannot quite figure out how to prune. I parked my modest sedan behind a gleaming black Escalade and a silver BMW that still had its temporary tags. I could feel the bass before I even got out of the car. A low, synthetic thump, thump, thump that vibrated through the soles of my shoes. I grabbed the prerequisite bottle of overpriced Cabernet from the passenger seat and walked up the stone path. The door was opened not by my aunt, but by a man I had never seen before, perhaps 10 years older than me, wearing a salmon-colored polo shirt that strained across his stomach. He looked through me, not at me. "You're Allison, Loretta's niece." "Oh, right. Come on in. I guess you're late." I stepped inside and a wall of heat and noise hit me. The house was suffocating. The air was thick with the smell of spilled beer, sharp vodka, and at least 3 different kinds of overpowering perfume. Beneath it all, faint and defeated, was the smell of roasting turkey, already promising to be dry. The music was deafening, some generic pop track designed for a club, not a family gathering. People were everywhere. Strangers, loud men in expensive watches, women with faces pulled tight and bright, manicured hands clutching wine glasses. Loretta finally burst through the crowd, her arms wide, her smile a painted crimson slash. "Allison, you made it. We were getting so worried." She pulled me into a hug that was all sharp angles and clinking jewelry. She kissed the air near both of my cheeks. "You're late, honey," she whispered, pulling back to appraise my outfit, a simple dark sweater and slacks. "The party started hours ago." The drive was long. "Aunt Loretta, happy Thanksgiving." Yes. Go put your things somewhere." She gestured vaguely and was immediately swallowed back into a laughing cluster of strangers. I saw my cousin Mara holding court on a white leather sofa. She was the center of gravity in this house, and she knew it. She saw me, and her smile faltered for just a second. She beckoned me over, not by waving, but by crooking a single, long finger. I navigated the crowd, murmuring apologies as I squeezed past laughing bodies. "Allison," Mara said. Her voice was flat. She didn't get up. "You made it." "Hey, Mara, happy Thanksgiving. The place looks full." "It is," she said, taking a sip from her champagne flute. "The living room is for VIPs tonight. Dax's partners are here." She gestured to the crowd of polo shirts. "So, you're going to have to be in the basement." It was not a request. It was a directive. A cold knot formed in my stomach, the one I had been anticipating since I left my apartment. "The basement, Mara. I just drove 3 hours. There is no bed in the basement." "We put a mattress down." Loretta reappeared, sensing the friction, her face a mask of frantic hospitality. "Oh, Allison, honey, it's just so tight this year. The house is absolutely bursting at the seams." She gripped my arm, her nails digging in just slightly. Everyone has to sacrifice a little. You understand? It's family. I looked around the 4,000 square foot house. I looked at the strangers drinking Grey Goose on the veranda. I looked at Mara, reclining on her throne of white leather. I was the only one being asked to sacrifice. Fine, I said. Where is it? Mara pointed toward the kitchen. Through there. Don't trip. I carried my overnight bag and the useless bottle of wine through the chaotic kitchen, past a catering staff that looked exhausted, and to a narrow, dark door. I opened it. The smell hit me first. Damp, mildew, the unmistakable, metallic tang of an old water heater. I flicked a switch. The stairs were steep, uncarpeted. At the bottom, a single, bare bulb buzzed and flickered, casting erratic, sickly shadows on the concrete walls. This was not a finished basement. This was a utility room. In the corner, shoved against a wall sweating with condensation, was a thin foam mattress laid directly on the floor. It looked like something salvaged from a college dorm. The pillow was a flat, yellowed square. The only other furniture was the massive, rumbling water heater and the furnace, which kicked on with a heavy whoosh as I reached the bottom step. I set my bag down on the concrete, the only clean spot. The air was frigid, but the noise from the machinery was loud. I sat on the edge of the mattress. The springs groaned in protest. This was not an oversight. This was not a problem of tight space. This was a message. This is where you belong. This is what we think of you. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. An urgent email from Larkspur. Zoning Commission moved the hearing to Monday. Need revised environmental impact studies and cost analysis by Friday morning. It was a problem. A real problem. Something I could solve. I needed my laptop. And I needed Wi-Fi. I went back up the stairs. The party noise was a physical barrier. I stood at the top, just inside the kitchen door, invisible. Aunt Loretta. I had to raise my voice. Mara turned, emerging from the living room, her eyes sharp. What is it? Allison? You look like you've seen a ghost. I just need the Wi-Fi password. I have an emergency at work. Mara actually laughed. A short, barking sound. An emergency at your little non-profit thing. Seriously, it's Thanksgiving. We are trying to have a holiday. Put the phone away. You are not going to ruin the atmosphere with your work. It is not a non-profit, Mara, and it will just take a few minutes. Just use your data plan, she snapped, turning her back on me. I retreated. The flickering light of the basement felt like an interrogation lamp. I sat on the cot and tethered my phone to my laptop. The signal was one bar. Slow, unreliable, footsteps on the stairs. It was Mara again. She was holding her champagne flute in one hand and a brand new, obnoxiously bright orange handbag in the other. You like it? She asked, dangling the bag. Dax got it for me. Milan, his bonus was insane this year. It's bright, Mara. It is, she said, her smile thin and cruel. Must be nice being single like you. All that freedom, no kids, no husband to worry about, nobody to invite you anywhere serious, of course, so you can just focus on whatever it is you do with those little buildings. She looked around the basement, a performative shiver. God, it's grim down here. Her husband, Dax, appeared at the top of the stairs. He was swaying, his face flushed with alcohol. Allie Hay, down in the dungeon. He laughed, a wet, choking sound. What does that Larkspur place even pay you? Gotta be pennies. My bonus this year. Allie 6 figures. 6 figures. He tapped his temple. You should really find a nice guy to take care of you. A girl should not have to worry about concrete permits, or whatever. He found this hilarious. He and Mara laughed together, a harsh duet that echoed off the concrete walls. I did not say anything. I just looked at them. I watched the desperation in Mara's eyes, the brittle need to prove her worth through a handbag. I watched the sloppy arrogance of Dax, a man whose entire identity was a number on a paycheck. They needed me to be small. They needed me to be the failure in the basement so they could feel like the VIPs upstairs. If you'll excuse me, I said, my voice perfectly flat. I have work to do. They left. their laughter fading as they returned to the party. I turned back to my laptop. The signal was impossible. I needed a stable surface. I looked around. There was nothing but damp cardboard boxes, stacked precariously. I shifted one, looking for a place to brace my laptop bag. Tucked behind the water heater, half hidden in the shadows, was a different kind of box, a standard-issue banker's box. Scribbled on the side in thick black marker were 2 words, Walter Kingsley. My blood, which had been simmering with quiet anger, turned to ice. Walter Kingsley, my grandfather, my mother's father, the one person in this entire family who ever demanded precision, the man who taught me how to read a blueprint, how to play chess, how to value my own mind. Why were his personal files here? In a damp basement, next to a leaking pipe, in Loretta's house. He lived in a clean, state-of-the-art assisted living facility across the state. His affairs were meant to be handled by his lawyer. My hands were shaking. I lifted the lid. It was full. Bank statements, property deeds, medical directives, a thick packet of documents for something called the Seabright Trust. This was not junk. This was his life. A sound drifted down. Not music, voices, the vents. The house's heating system was acting as a perfect conduit. It was Loretta's voice, pitched low and conspiratorial, coming from the kitchen above. "He is just so confused," she was saying to someone. I recognized the other voice, Dax. "Completely confusion." Loretta continued. "Walter does not even know what day it is half the time. He will sign anything you put in front of him. It is sad." "Really?" "The POA is ready," Dax said. "My guy Graham says the transfer to Seabright can happen Monday, once Walter signs off." "It is better this way," Loretta said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "We are just handling it, for his own good, protecting the family assets." Handling it. I looked at the documents in my lap. I thought of my grandfather, Walter, the man who, at 85, still completed the Times crossword in pen. Confused, I heard them clink glasses upstairs. A toast, probably to family. I closed the box. I slid it back into the shadows, exactly as I had found it. The flickering bulb above me suddenly felt sharp, focused. The cold from the concrete floor was no longer just uncomfortable. It was clarifying. This was not a holiday. This was a heist, and they had just made the mistake of putting the evidence and the witness in the same locked room. I pulled out my phone. The single bar of service was enough. I opened a new note. My fingers were perfectly steady. I typed 2 words. Basement begin. The noise from upstairs was a dull vibration through the concrete ceiling. A heavy, repetitive thump, thump, thump as the bass line of some song I did not recognize pounded its way through the floorboards. It was the sound of my family celebrating their good fortune. Celebrating the fact that they were not me, alone in the cold, next to a rumbling water heater. I had pushed the banker's box of Walter's files back into the shadows, exactly as I had found it. My phone note was saved. Basement begin. The words looked stark and absolute on the small screen. Walter Kingsley did not tolerate ambiguity. He taught me to play chess when I was 8 years old. I was an impatient child. I wanted to rush. I wanted to take the pawn simply because it was available. "Allison," he would say, his voice never rising, his hand steady as he motioned to the rook. "Look at the whole board. Do not react to where your opponent is. React to where they are going. Calculate the next 3 moves, not just the next one." He taught me that discipline was a form of self-respect, while Loretta and my mother, before she got sick, were teaching Mara how to host, how to smile, how to network for a suitable husband. Walter was teaching me how to read a balance sheet. My mother died too young, cancer. It was quick and brutal, stealing her away when I was 12. After that, I became a permanent fixture in the Voss Heart ecosystem. I was the project, the burden, the poor thing who needed raising. Loretta did her duty, but it was a duty performed with a constant, weary sigh and a silent calculation of cost. In their house, I was always the one who isn't quite good enough, not pretty enough for the debutante circles Mara ran in, not wealthy enough to be interesting, not ruthless enough to be respected. I was the quiet, smart girl, which, in their world, was a social liability. Walter was different. He was not a Voss. He was a Kingsley. The Kingsley shipyards had built half the commercial fleet on the East Coast for 50 years. He was old money, but a different kind of old money. He was brick and steel and maritime contracts, not polo shirts and investment bonuses. He sold the company decades ago, for a sum that the family only whispered about, a sum that clearly haunted Loretta. Walter did not buy yachts with the profits. He did not move to Harbor Glen. He lived simply. He endowed foundations for naval architecture. He paid for my education every penny with the quiet instruction that I was to build something useful, which made the rumors of the last 6 months so jarring. Loretta had been managing the narrative with surgical precision. "Walter is having a hard time," she would say on our brief, infrequent family calls. "He is getting frail. 2 months ago, the narrative shifted. We have had to take over his finances, just to help. He is so confused." A power of attorney. They were isolating him, wrapping their concern around him like insulation, suffocating him while claiming to keep him warm. I looked at my phone. 1 bar of service. I had to try. I went to my favorites and pressed Walter. It rang. Once, twice, 3 times. The noise of the party upstairs masked the sound. I pressed my other ear closed, the cartilage cold against my finger. It went to voicemail. "You have reached Walter Kingsley. I am unavailable. Leave your name, your number, and the precise reason for your call. I will return it at my earliest convenience." I let the message play twice. His voice, it was not frail, it was not confused. It was the same voice that had taught me chess. Clear, measured, the consonants sharp, precise reason for your call. This was not the voice of a man who signed things without reading the fine print. This was not the voice of a man who was, as Loretta claimed, out of his mind. My suspicion, which had been a low hum of anxiety, hardened into a cold, heavy certainty. Loretta was lying. My work. Mara called it my little non-profit thing. I had just spent 8 months securing zoning and funding for a 72-unit affordable housing project in a neighborhood that desperately needed it. It was a brutal fight against developers, city council, and a budget that had zero margin for error. We broke ground last week. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. It was useful. When I mentioned it at the last family gathering Easter, I think Dax had looked at me with genuine pity. "What is the margin on affordable?" he had asked, swirling his brandy. "Like 3%. That is a rounding error on my portfolio, Allie." They laughed. They preferred the concept of luxury real estate, the empty glass towers Dax's partner sold to foreign investors, things that were expensive, not things that were useful. I remembered that Easter, Walter had been there. He looked sharp in a navy blazer. He argued with Dax about municipal bonds and won. Later, Mara had accidentally used Walter's credit card to buy a $200 appetizer platter from a high-end caterer. "Oh, Grandpa, I am so sorry," she had trilled, her voice dripping with fake remorse. "Our cards must look identical. I just grabbed the wrong one." Walter, who carried a simple, 20-year-old leather bifold, had just looked at her. He did not yell. He did not scold. He just said, "No, Mara, they do not." He took the receipt from her hand. The next week, I heard from my mother's cousin that he had deducted the exact amount from the monthly stipend he still, inexplicably, gave her. He was precise. His favorite phrase, the one he repeated every time I left for college, every time I started a new job, echoed in the damp air of the basement. "Allison, do not wait for people to give you permission to be respected. Earn it, and then demand it." I looked at my overnight bag. It was cheap, canvas. Anyone could get into it. The party upstairs was still raging. But the basement was a tomb. I was vulnerable. I pulled my wallet out of my purse. I took out my phone. I slid them under the thin foam mattress, pushing them toward the center where the concrete floor would protect them from any stray moisture. I took the small TSA lock from my toiletries bag and threaded it through the zippers of my main luggage. Then I took the second lock from my laptop bag and threaded it through the first lock, a double lock. It would not stop a determined thief, but it would make noise. It would take time. I sat back on the cot, my preparations complete. The party began to thin. The thump, thump, thump of the music stopped, replaced by the high-pitched laughter of goodbyes and the clatter of plates being collected by the caterers. The house settled, and in the quiet, I heard a new sound. Drip, drip, drip. A pipe, somewhere in the concrete wall behind the furnace, was leaking. It was slow, rhythmic, a clock, drip, drip. Then, the vent brought Loretta's voice again. She was no longer performing for the party. This voice was sharp, tired, and full of business. She was in the kitchen, probably on her phone. "He is taking the bait." "Yes, Graham." "No, he is completely isolated. He thinks I am his only ally." A pause. I held my breath. "We just need the signature. Monday, 10 a.m. The notary is booked." Another pause. Her voice dropped, but the vent carried it clearly. "Once it is signed, it is over. The trust is ours." Ours, not his. Ours. Drip, drip. My first instinct was pure adrenaline. I wanted to storm the stairs. I wanted to grab that box of files, throw it on the gleaming quartz countertop in the kitchen, and watch their fake smiles shatter. I wanted to yell, to expose them, to see the look on Loretta's face when the poor thing in the basement revealed she knew everything. But Walter's voice cut through the anger. "Look at the whole board. Do not react to where they are. React to where they are going. They were going to a notary on Monday at 10 a.m. Confronting them now would accomplish nothing. They would lie. They would destroy the files in the box. They would move the meeting. They would gaslight me, call me crazy, hysterical, jealous, the poor relative trying to stir up trouble. They had the advantage. They were upstairs. I was in the basement. I did not move. I lay back on the damp mattress, the double-locked suitcase at my feet, my wallet and phone digging into my back through the thin foam. The pipe dripped. The furnace kicked on with a heavy metallic roar. I would not confront them. I would stay here. I would be the good, quiet, forgotten niece. I would observe. This basement was not my prison. It was my listening post. The party was over. The house above me had finally fallen quiet, the silence settling in like a layer of dust. The only sounds left were the ones that belonged to the basement, the low mechanical rumble of the furnace cycling on and off, the erratic thump of the water heater, and the persistent, maddening drip, 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 from the pipe hidden somewhere in the concrete. The air was so cold it felt wet. I pulled my knees to my chest, my sweater a uselessly thin barrier against the damp. I shifted on the foam mattress, trying to find an angle that did not involve a spring digging into my hip, and my eyes caught it. It was not a reflection, it was a light. Near the top of the stairs, plugged into the wall outlet just above the baseboard, was a small, black cube. It looked like a standard phone charger, the kind you buy at a gas station, but in the center of the cube, a tiny, blue-white LED blinked, a steady, rhythmic pulse. Blink, blink, blink. I stood up, my stockinged feet silent on the cold concrete. I moved toward the stairs, my body angled away from the cot. I crouched, pretending to check something in my shoe. It was not a charger. It was a camera, a cheap, Wi-Fi-enabled nanny cam, the lens barely visible, no larger than a pinprick, set just above the fake USB port, and it was pointed directly at the cot. It was pointed directly at me. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. This was not an accident. This was not an oversight. Loretta's frantic excuse about a full house was a lie. Mara's order to put me down here was a directive. They did not just put me in the basement to insult me. They put me here to monitor me. They were worried. Worried the poor relative might snoop. Worried I might overhear something. Worried I might steal the silver. The thought was so insulting it was almost absurd. This was not about protecting their property from me. It was about protecting their plan from me. They had set a trap. They were watching me, waiting for me to act out, to complain, to give them a reason to call me unstable, hysterical, jealous. A hot, white anger flared in my chest. I wanted to rip it from the wall and smash it on the floor. Calculate the next 3 moves. Walter's voice, cold, precise. I took a deep breath. I did not touch the camera. I did not even look at it again. I turned, walked back to the cot, and sat down, as if I had seen nothing. Move 1. Deny them the reaction they want. Move 2. Create my own record. I fumbled in my purse, keeping my back to the camera. I pulled my phone out. The screen brightness was already low. I shielded it with my body as I unlocked it. The single bar of service was still there. Weak but present. I opened the voice memos app. I hit New Recording. The red waveform flickered to life, capturing the sound of the furnace and the dripping pipe. I turned the screen off, but the recording continued. I carefully slid the phone back under the mattress, near the edge, positioning the microphone to face the room and the stairs. My own little black box. I lay back, my heart pounding a hard, fast rhythm against my ribs. Let them watch me pretend to sleep. I would listen. I did not have to wait long. The door at the top of the stairs creaked open. A sliver of warm, yellow light from the kitchen cut into the dimness. I saw Mara's silhouette. "Here," she said. Her voice was flat, laced with contempt. Something heavy, balled up, landed on the concrete floor with a dull thud. It was an old coat, pilled and stained with what looked like paint. "For warmth," she said, the words a clear mockery. She closed the door, but not fully. She left it open a crack. The light vanished, but the sound channel was now perfect. The vents carried the rumble, but the open door carried the words. I heard Dax's voice, no longer performing for his partners. This was his real voice, loud and sloppy with late-night alcohol. "It is absolutely foolproof. Loretta, I told you. Graham has the POA documents ready for Monday. Once Walter signs, it is done." "Are you sure he will sign?" Loretta's voice. The hostess mask was gone. This was sharp, anxious, and greedy. "He will sign," Dax scoffed. "You have been priming him for months, telling him he is losing it. He trusts you. He thinks you are the only one looking out for him. He will sign just to make you shut up, and as soon as he does, the Seabright Trust is activated, under your control." Seabright Trust, the name from the box. My phone was recording every word. "That entire Kingsley fund it unlocks," Dax continued. He sounded giddy. "We are talking $1 billion. Loretta, easy, $1 billion. The first thing I am doing is buying a yacht. A real one. None of that 30-foot crap. I am talking 100-footer, with a crew." "Dax, shut up," Mara hissed. "The help is still here, cleaning. They are in the kitchen. They cannot hear. And she—" He lowered his voice, but the vent carried it. "Is in the cellar. She cannot hear a thing. She is probably asleep on her concrete slab." A rustle of paper. Loretta again. Her anxiety was gone, replaced by a low, satisfied purr. She was reading. "It is not just the fund. Dax, look at this list Graham pulled. Municipal bonds. A fully vested brokerage account. And oh my God, he still owns the Riverton Commercial Building, the one on the waterfront. The old shipyard offices." Dax sounded genuinely stunned. "That is prime development land. That is $50 million, minimum." "And he just forgot about it," Loretta said, a dry, humorless laugh. "The old man will not remember any of it. He has no idea what he even has." The lie was so profound it almost choked me. Walter, who taught me compound interest at age 10. Walter, who could recite maritime law. He won't remember. "It is all set," Loretta said, her voice firm. "Monday, 10 a.m. The door at the top of the stairs clicked shut. The conversation moved to the living room, muffled by the vents, but I had what I needed. They had confessed. I sat up. The blue light of the camera was still blinking. Blink, blink. It was my witness. I needed the final piece, the confirmation. I moved silently across the floor to the banker's box. Walter Kingsley. I lifted the lid. The smell of mildew and old paper filled my lungs. I sifted through the files, my fingers numb from the cold. Bank statements, deeds, and the thick packet for the Seabright Trust. I pulled it out, tucked inside the cover page. I found it. A single sheet of paper, an invoice, from Lake Row Notary Services. It was a charge for a document pre-review and consultation, a dry run. They had practiced. And at the bottom, the appointment, client Loretta Voss, Re Kingsley Estate, date Monday, November 27th, time 10 a.m. The Monday after Thanksgiving. I placed the invoice back, exactly as I had found it. I closed the lid, sliding the box back into the shadows. I sat back on the cot. My mind was racing, fitting the pieces together, the lies, the POA, the bank, the appointment. As I stared into the darkness, the single, buzzing light bulb above my head gave a sharp pop, and the room plunged into absolute, suffocating blackness. I froze. The furnace was off. The water heater was silent. The only sound was the drip, drip, drip of the pipe, now terrifyingly loud in the pitch black. And then, a new sound. From the top of the stairs, a metallic scrape, the unmistakable, heavy sound of a deadbolt sliding into place. Skirk, thunk. A key turning in the lock. My breath caught in my throat. They had not just turned off the light at a breaker. They had killed the power to the basement, and they had locked me in. This was no longer a social snub. This was not just an insult. This was false imprisonment. This was coercion. A wave of pure, animal panic rose in my chest. I was trapped. No window. One door. And it was locked from the outside. The air felt thick, heavy. I could smell the mold, the damp concrete, the stale, dead air. Breathe. I fought it down. This is what they wanted. They wanted me to panic, to scream, to bang on the door, to prove I was the hysterical, unstable relative they had been describing. The nanny cam, I realized, was probably battery-powered. It was still watching. Blink, blink, a single blue eye in the dark. I would not give them the satisfaction. My heart was a hammer, but my mind was ice. They had made their final, critical mistake. I fumbled in my laptop bag, my fingers finding a pen. I could not see, but I did not need to. I felt for the banker's box, pulling the lid toward me. On the smooth, cool cardboard, I wrote, my letters large and firm. They just recorded evidence of their own coercion. Let them find that in the morning. I sat back on the cot. The darkness absolute. They thought I was trapped. They thought I was helpless. They thought I was alone. I pulled my phone from under the mattress. The screen lit my face with a pale, white glow. I stopped the recording. I saved the file. Basement proof. The single bar of service was still there. Flickering, but holding. I opened my contacts. I scrolled past A, past L, past M, in the cold, oppressive, locked in dark. My fingers steady. I pressed the call button. It rang once. I called the only person who mattered. I called Walter. The phone was cold against my ear, the only light in the pitch black coming from its screen. The call connected on the first ring, not the second. The first, before I could say, hello, Grandpa? Or, I am trapped. His voice came through the line, perfectly clear, as if he were standing next to me in the dark. It was not the voice of a confused old man. It was the voice of the man who built Kingsley shipyards. Allison, are you in Loretta's basement? The air left my lungs. The question was so specific, so immediate, that it broke through the panic. I could hear the drip, drip, drip of the pipe in the silence as I tried to process the words. Yes, I whispered. How did you know? Because you have not moved in 5 hours, he said, his voice tight with a controlled anger that was not directed at me. You are still at the Harbor Glen address. Moved, but how do you know where I am? The application you installed, he said. The Elder Care Connect, the one you said was for my heart rate and in case of a fall. A very thoughtful application. Allison, it has an excellent GPS locator. I just had to reverse the permissions. I sank back onto the thin mattress, the tool I had given him to monitor his safety. He had been using it to monitor mine. He had known I was here. He had been waiting. He was not isolated. He was watching. He was 3 moves ahead. They locked the door. Walter, they cut the power. I know, he said. His voice was grim. They are fools. They are predictable. And they are desperate. I need you to be calm. Allison, can you be calm? I am calm. My voice was shaking, but my mind was clearing. The panic was receding, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. This was a project. This was a problem to be solved. Good, Walter said. They are planning to file a fraudulent power of attorney on Monday morning. They have a notary booked. They believe I'm incapacitated, and they intend to liquidate the Kingsley Charitable Fund. I heard, I whispered. Seabright Trust. Dax wants a yacht. $1 billion yacht, Walter said. The disgust in his voice palpable. They are sloppy. Greed makes people sloppy. They talk too loud. What do we do? I cannot get out. You will, he said. But not tonight. Tonight, you are exactly where you need to be. You are the witness they do not know they have. That camera they have on you. Is it still blinking? My eyes found it in the dark. The tiny blue-white eye. Blink, blink. Yes, it is still on. Battery backup. Even cheaper than I thought. Good. Let it watch you. Let them see their poor, forgotten niece trying to sleep. Let them build their confidence. When they unlock that door in the morning, they will expect you to be grateful for a cup of coffee. They will expect you to be cowed. A text message notification lit up my screen, the sudden light making me flinch. A confirmation code. I have just sent you a reservation, Walter continued, his voice shifting from tactical to something warmer. It is at the Riverview Summit. The Riverview Summit, the single most expensive hotel in the state, the glass tower that overlooked the entire harbor, the place Dax's partners probably dreamed of staying. It is the penthouse suite, Allison. It is booked under my name. Guest of W. K. I want you to leave that house as soon as they unlock that door. Do not make a scene. Do not grab breakfast. Do not speak to them, other than to say you are going for a walk. Get in your car, and you drive straight there. Walter, the penthouse. This is not a vacation, he cut in, his voice sharp again. It is a command center. My attorney will be meeting you there at 9 a.m. sharp. Her name is Eleanor Pike. She is the best. You will give her everything. The audio file you recorded, the photograph of the invoice you are going to take before you leave. Everything. The audio file. He even knew I would record it. Of course he did. He taught me to document everything. A thought pushed through the logistics. A cold, practical thought that had been bothering me for months. The one that made Loretta's lies almost plausible. Walter, I thought, Loretta said you were... What broke? She said you were living on a fixed income, that the shipyard money was gone. She said she was paying for your facility. Walter was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, the weariness in his voice was profound. A man who looks poor, Allison, is invisible to the greedy. A man who looks rich is a target. I have been poor for 10 years. It is the best filter I have ever found. It hurts that my own family is the one that failed the test. He was not the one being trapped. He was the one setting the trap. He had been playing a long game, a game of calculated poverty, and Loretta and Dax had just walked right into it, blinded by their own arrogance. They thought he was an asset to be stripped. They had no idea he was the auditor. I need your word, Walter said, his voice firm, pulling me back to the present. You will not confront them, not tonight, not in the morning. They are dangerous because they are stupid, and they feel cornered. They locked you in a basement. Allison, That is not a simple act of cruelty. It is a crime. They have crossed a line. Now, we let them walk right into Eleanor's office. I understand, I said. I will not say a word. Good. Get some sleep, if you can. It will be a long day tomorrow. Walter. Yes. Thank you. I am your grandfather. Allison. I protect my investments. The line clicked. I was alone again, in the absolute dark, but I was no longer trapped. The drip, drip, drip of the pipe was no longer a sound of menace. It was a countdown. I slid my phone, still recording just in case, into my hair, tucking it beneath my head as I lay back down. I did not want the blue camera eye to see the light if another message came through. My double-locked suitcase was hard, but I put my thin sweater over it and used it as a pillow. The concrete floor was radiating cold, seeping into my bones, but I barely felt it. I thought of Mara, asleep in her warm bed, dreaming of her Milan handbag. I thought of Dax, passed out and dreaming of his 100-foot yacht. I thought of Loretta, dreaming of her signature, her control, her victory. And I thought of me, in the cold, damp dark, holding the receipt for all of it. I felt for the pen again, and the cardboard lid of the banker's box. I did not need to see what I was writing. I knew the words by heart. Tomorrow, floor 48. I closed my eyes. The cold was a comfort. The darkness was a shield. On the steady, rhythmic beat of the dripping water, I finally fell asleep. And I did not dream of the basement. I dreamed of a silent glass elevator, rising fast, leaving the dark ground behind as the entire city spread out below me, a carpet of glittering, distant lights. I was awake before the sound came. My body was coiled, a spring compressed by the cold concrete, waiting. At 5:03 a.m., it happened. The scrape of the key, followed by the heavy thunk of the deadbolt sliding back. I counted to 60. Footsteps. Heavy and clumsy Dax, probably moving back toward the living room. I moved. Silently, I retrieved my phone from under the mattress, stopping the second audio recording I'd made through the night. It was mostly just the pipe dripping and the furnace rumbling, but it was 8 hours of tape confirming I was locked in. I slipped on my shoes. I unlocked my luggage. I walked to the banker's box, Walter Kingsley. I slid my phone out, opened the camera, and took 3 sharp, clear photos of the Lake Row Notary Services invoice. Flash off, the details were perfectly legible. I slid the box back. I left the message I'd written on the lid. They just recorded evidence of their own coercion. I zipped my bag. I did not go up the kitchen stairs. I went the other way, toward the door that led to the garage. It was a simple utility knob. Unlocked, I eased it open. The garage was dark, filled with Loretta's Lexus and Dax's Escalade. My sedan was parked outside. I slipped out the side door into the frigid, pre-dawn air. The sky was a dark, bruised purple. I got in my car. The engine turning over sounded like a cannon shot in the silence. I did not care. I backed out of the driveway. As soon as I hit the street, I reached up and tapped the power button on my dashcam. The small red light glowed. It recorded my exit, the time, the date, the location. Document everything. The drive to the Riverview summit took 20 minutes. I left the cold, claustrophobic streets of Harbor Glen and entered the city proper. The hotel was a spear of glass and steel piercing the dawn sky. I left my car with the valet, my cheap canvas bag looking pathetic next to the Louis Vuitton luggage being unloaded from a Bentley. I did not care. The lobby was silent, vast, and smelled faintly of white tea and money. The man at the desk was impeccably dressed. "Good morning," I said, my voice steady. "I am checking in. The reservation is under Kingsley. I am the guest." His fingers tapped on the keyboard. His expression did not change. "Ah, yes. We have been expecting you. The penthouse suite. Guest of W. K. Welcome to the summit. Ms. Barnes." He produced a key card, a heavy, weighted piece of black plastic. He handed it to me. "Floor 48, The elevator's to your right. It is key activated. I walked to the elevator. The doors slid closed, sealing me in polished mahogany. I inserted the key. The PH button lit up. The elevator began to move. A smooth, silent, relentless ascent. My ears popped. The doors opened directly into the suite. It was not a room. It was a small country. 2 stories of glass walls, a floating staircase, a fireplace, a grand piano, and a view that stretched from the harbor to the ocean. The sun was just beginning to break the horizon, flooding the space with pale gold light. After the damp, flickering bulb of the basement, the light was blinding. I had just finished taking the hottest, longest shower of my life when the doorbell chimed. It was exactly 9 a.m. I opened the door. The woman standing there was my age, maybe slightly older. She wore a perfectly tailored gray suit. Her hair was pulled back into a severe bun, and her eyes, behind thin-rimmed glasses, were the color of a winter sky. She carried a sleek, aluminum briefcase. "Ms. Barnes, I am Eleanor Pike." Her voice was like her suit. No wasted material. "Mr. Kingsley sends his regards. May I come in?" "Please." She did not look at the view. She did not comment on the suite. She walked to the massive glass dining table, set down her briefcase, and opened it. It was not full of papers. It was full of technology. A high-speed portable scanner, a multi-port USB drive, and a laptop that looked like it belonged to the military. "Let us begin," she said. For the next 30 minutes, we worked. This was a world I understood. Data transfer, evidence logging. "This is the primary audio file," I said, airdropping the basement proof file. It captured the conversation between Loretta Voss, Dax, and Mara. "You will hear them confirm the plan, the bank, and the motive." Acknowledged. She already had headphones in, her eyes closed, listening, her face betraying nothing. "This is the secondary audio. It confirms I was locked in from approximately 11 p.m. until 5 a.m. False imprisonment. Noted. These are the photos of the basement, the cot, the water heater, the lock on the outside of the door, and the nanny cam. Noted." She scanned them, labeled them. "And this," I said, "is the photo of the invoice from Lake Row." Eleanor stopped. She took off her headphones. She looked at the photo, zooming in on the details. "Lake Row, Monday, 10 a.m. She opened her own laptop. "Mr. Kingsley provided me with his complete digital files last month. He suspected this was coming." She typed, her fingers flying. "Seabright Trust. Ah, yes. Graham, the consultant Dax mentioned. He is a disbarred attorney from New Jersey, now operating as a wealth manager. He is the architect." She pulled up a file. "Mr. Kingsley's digital signature sample." She pulled up another. "And this is the preliminary e-signature Loretta filed with Seabright to initiate the POA request." She put them side by side on the large screen. "There," she said, pointing. "Look at the loop on the W, the pressure, the angle of the K." "It is close," I said. "It is," she said. "It is a brilliant forgery, but it is a forgery. It is not his. They did not just plan to coerce him, they have already committed wire fraud." The air in the room felt thin. This was no longer a family dispute. This was a multi-million-dollar criminal conspiracy. And they had already started. At 10:30, the massive television in the living room chimed. Eleanor tapped a key, and Walter's face appeared. He was not in his room at the facility. He was in an office, sharp, alert, and wearing a dark blue suit. "Eleanor, Allison, report." Eleanor was concise. "They have the appointment. Walter, Monday, 10 a.m. Lake Row. They have already filed a forged e-signature with Seabright. They are planning to get your wet signature on the hard copy POA to legitimize the fraudulent digital transfer they already initiated. They are moving faster than I anticipated," Walter said. He did not look worried. He looked angry. "What is the play?" I asked. Do we send Eleanor? Do we file an injunction this morning? No, Walter said. An injunction stops them. It does not catch them. They will scatter. They will lawyer up. Graham will disappear. No, the appointment on Monday stands. Walter, you cannot go in there, I said. They will coerce you. It will be your word against theirs. I am absolutely going in there, he said firmly. They want Walter Kingsley. They will get Walter Kingsley. Loretta and Dax will walk me into that notary's office themselves, but we will not be alone. Eleanor nodded, already understanding. I will file for an emergency civil hearing. I will have a court reporter and a plainclothes officer from the Economic Crimes Unit present, posing as my paralegals. Exactly, Walter said. We let them commit the act, in front of witnesses, with a certified stenographer recording every word. He held up an object, a pen, a beautiful, heavy, old-fashioned fountain pen. This was a gift from your grandmother. Allison, it is also, as of last night, a broadcast-quality audio recorder. Operation Turkey Lift is a go. This penthouse is our base of operations until Monday. Eleanor, I said, my mind racing. That e-signature, we can do better than just saying it is a forgery. We can prove it. She looked at me. Go on. I have a friend, Avery Knox. We went to college together. He works for the state, in the Forensic Document Analysis Unit, the Signature Verification Office. They have access to Walter's driver's license signatures, his passport signatures, every official mark he has made for 30 years. That is highly irregular. Allison, that is a state database. Avery owes me, I said. My firm built the community center his kids go to. He can run a non-binding comparative analysis, an informal look. If he flags it, it gives your court order immediate, undeniable probable cause. Eleanor considered this. Make the call, but use a burner. There is one in the desk. I found the phone. I called Avery. I explained, carefully, what I needed, a hypothetical match. He was quiet for a long time. This is not a community center. Allison, he said. I know, I said. It is a billion-dollar charitable foundation, and they are stealing it from an old man. Send me the files, Avery said. When the call was done, the room was quiet again. Eleanor was typing furiously, preparing the motions for the asset freeze. She would file them the moment the bank opened on Friday, freezing any attempt by Loretta to move money over the holiday weekend. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a deep, hollow ache. I felt the sleepless night, the cold, the rage. I walked over to the minibar. It was stocked with tiny, expensive bottles of vodka, gin, whiskey, everything Dax would have loved. I opened the small refrigerator door. I looked at the little bottles, the tiny cans of tonic. I took out a bottle of still water. I twisted the cap and drank. The water was cold, clean. It was not a celebration. It was fuel. I had to keep my head clear. My heart was pounding. A tidal wave of fury and betrayal held back by a thin wall of professional calm. My phone chimed, a text from Walter. This afternoon, we used the penthouse as our Thanksgiving table. The silence of the penthouse was a weapon. It was clean, absolute, and amplified by the 20-foot ceilings and the endless expanse of glass. Down in the basement, the silence had been thick, damp, and full of menace. Here, on the 48th floor, the silence was pure oxygen. Eleanor Pike was at the glass dining table, her laptop open, her aluminum briefcase sitting beside her. She had been working the phone since 7 a.m. She'd already confirmed the temporary asset freeze was in place, filed by an emergency judge just as the markets opened. Seabright Trust was now a locked box. My phone, the personal one I rarely used, began to vibrate on the marble countertop. The screen lit up Aunt Loretta. I let it ring. I watched the call icon vibrate, an insect of manufactured panic. It rang, and finally, it stopped. I took a sip of my water. A few seconds later, a text message. Allison, where are you? You walked out. The least you could do is say goodbye. We were worried. Before I could even formulate a reply, my phone buzzed again, a notification from the Voss Hart family group chat. This one was from Mara. Unbelievable. Allison just snuck out of the house before anyone was awake, after we were so kind as to host her. She did not even say thank you. So disrespectful. I looked at Eleanor. She raised an eyebrow, waiting. I picked up the phone. I replied directly to Mara's group text. My voice, my tone, had to be neutral, calm. I went for a run. I then went to my camera roll. I selected the photo I had taken in the pre-dawn dark, the close-up of the cot, the concrete floor, and the angry black-green patch of mold spreading up the drywall just inches from the pillow. I sent the photo to the group chat. My follow-up text was simple. The air quality in the basement was affecting my allergies. The response was immediate, the digital equivalent of a stunned silence. For almost a full minute, no one typed. They had been caught. Their hosting had been exposed with a single image. Then, my phone rang again. This time, I answered it. It was Loretta. "Allison," she hissed. Her voice was no longer the concerned aunt. It was the sharp, angry voice I had heard through the heating vent. "What do you think you are doing?" "I am not sure what you mean." "Aunt Loretta. Sending that picture. You are trying to embarrass me. That is an outrageous, manipulative lie. It is just an old house. It is a damp basement, and you locked me in it." "We did no such thing," she shrieked. The door must have stuck. You are just like your mother, always so dramatic, always the victim. Calculate the next 3 moves. "I am not a victim. Loretta, I am just allergic to mold." "Fine," she snapped. "Fine. If you are going to be that ungrateful, do not bother coming back. You are not welcome at the main table for Thanksgiving dinner. You can eat with the caterers if you even bother to show your face." She was waiting for me to beg, to apologize, to be the good, small niece. I let the silence stretch. "Oh, that is a shame," I said, my voice light, breezy, the voice of someone who has not slept on a concrete floor. "I was actually hoping you would be free for lunch." "What?" "Lunch," I said. "You, Mara, and Dax, I wanted to do a little pre-Thanksgiving toast. Would you be free to join me?" "Say, around 1 p.m. "Join you where? At some diner?" She scoffed. "No, nothing like that. I am at the Riverview Summit. Grandpa booked a suite, and it is just lovely, far too big for just me. We could have something sent up, just us. The view is spectacular." Silence, a dense, heavy silence on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing. I could hear the gears turning, the greed fighting with the anger, the suspicion fighting with the envy. They had to know. How was this possible? Walter was broke. Allison was poor. This narrative was wrong. You are at the Riverview Summit. Floor 48, I said, making my voice casual. "The penthouse. Just let the front desk know you are here for W.K.'s guest." The silence stretched for 3 full minutes. I just waited. Eleanor watched me, a small, impressed smile on her face. Finally, a text popped up in the group chat. It was Mara. "The Riverview seriously," I replied. 1 p.m. See you then?" Another minute. Loretta's voice came back on the line, suddenly smooth, the frantic hostess returning. "Well, that is a very sudden, generous offer. Allison, we would not want to disappoint your grandfather if he went to all that trouble. Yes, we will see you at 1. She hung up. My phone immediately buzzed with a new private text. This one was from Dax. "How did you afford the summit?" My fingers flew. This was the most important move. "I told you. Grandpa booked it." I set the phone down. Eleanor looked up from her laptop. "She took the bait, and she is spooked. She just placed a call to a burner phone, the one registered to Mr. Graham. She is panicking," I said. "She needs to know if the plan can be moved up. She is worried Walter has money." worried he is not as confused as she thought. Let her panic, Eleanor said. Panic makes people sloppy. The burner phone in Eleanor's briefcase chimed. It was not a call. It was a secure message. She picked it up, read the screen, and her expression changed. It was the first real emotion I had seen from her. It was triumph. Mr. Knox, I asked, my heart pounding. Mr. Knox, she confirmed. She turned the phone to me. It was a short, coded message, but the final line was clear. E-sig match negative, file integrity compromised. Source file is a high-resolution scan and trace. Pressure mapping and stroke sequencing are a 100% mismatch to state-verified exemplars. System has automatically flagged the Seabright account. Red alert. This is a Class B felony. A red alert, I breathed. He did it. He did, Eleanor said. The asset freeze is now ironclad. Any attempt to access that fund, by anyone, will trigger an immediate federal investigation. They are trapped. They just do not know it yet. I walked to the wall of glass, 48 floors below. The city moved like a machine. I felt, for the first time in my life, like I was at the controls. They are coming at 1, I said, turning back to Eleanor. Walter wanted this place as a command center. Is it secure? A thin smile touched Eleanor's lips. Mr. Kingsley arranged this suite through the hotel's corporate security, not the front desk, the guest of W.K. Package includes enhanced privacy protocols. The hotel is aware we are conducting a sensitive family legal matter. She tapped the edge of the glass dining table. The suite is secure. Every angle video, broadcast quality audio, all admissible. Walter had not just booked me a room, he had booked them a courtroom. They will walk in here, I said, thinking aloud. Expecting to see me, the poor relative, playing pretend in a rich man's room. They will think they can intimidate me. They will think I am stupid. And you will let them, Eleanor said. You will be the gracious host. They will talk, I said. Dax will want to brag. Mara will want to sneer. Loretta will want to probe, to find out what I know, what Walter is doing. Let them, Eleanor said. They are walking into a deposition they do not know they are giving. I picked up the phone for room service. This was not a real Thanksgiving. This was not a celebration. It was an interrogation. Room service. Yes, I would like to order lunch for the penthouse suite. Just some simple sandwiches, turkey, roast beef, and 4 bottles of water. Still water. No alcohol. I hung up. I looked at the vast, empty, beautiful room. Mara and Dax had children, 2, both under 10. I felt a sudden, sharp pang of relief that they were not here, that they were not part of this. This was not about them. They were the ones Walter and I were protecting their legacy from the greed of their own parents. The Kingsley Charitable Fund was meant to secure the entire family's future, not just fund Dax's impulse buys. This was a clean, surgical operation. No collateral damage, no children. I would set the table. I would be the good niece, and I would let them, in their own arrogant, sloppy voices, hand us the final piece of evidence we needed. I stood by the window, watching a ship, a real, working vessel, not a yacht, make its way into the harbor. My phone buzzed one last time, a private text, from Walter. It was just 3 words. You are not alone, at 1 p.m., on the dot. The doorbell chimed. It was not a buzz or a bell. It was a soft, 2-note sound that seemed to hang in the sunlit air. Eleanor was seated at the far end of the glass table. Her laptop closed, her hands folded. She looked like a friend, a very serious, very well-dressed friend, who was just here for a quiet lunch. I had set out the plates, the simple white hotel china. The sandwiches were on a platter, cut precisely. The bottles of water were lined up like soldiers. I had put on a quiet, classical station, the volume so low it was just a layer of gloss on the silence. The cameras, hidden in the smoke detectors and the floral arrangement, were rolling. I opened the door. They stood there for a second. Framed in the hallway, Loretta, in the center, was wearing a cream-colored cashmere suit, her face arranged in a mask of loving concern. Mara was beside her, phone already in hand, her eyes wide. Dax was behind them, his polo shirt straining, his face flushed with a mixture of suspicion and awe. They did not look at me. They looked past me. They looked at the 20-foot wall of glass. They looked at the grand piano. They looked at the floating staircase. They looked at the view that stretched from the glittering harbor to the deep blue line of the Atlantic. "Oh, my," Loretta breathed, pressing a hand to her chest. She stepped inside, and her performance began. "Allison, honey, this is just too much. Your grandfather should not be spending his money this way. Oh, I am so worried about him." Dax just whistled, a low, impressed sound. "Hell of a room, Allie. Hell of a room." Mara was already filming. She had the phone up, panning in a slow, dramatic arc, capturing the view, the piano, the ceiling. Her face was set in a pout of curated, casual wealth. "Thanksgiving, penthouse style." She narrated to her screen, her voice a breathy whisper. "Just a casual little get-together. The view is insane. You guys." She was branding her experience, claiming it, absorbing its prestige by proximity. She did not film me. She did not film Eleanor. We were just background details in her story. "Please," I said, gesturing to the table. "Sit down." "This is your friend?" Loretta asked, her eyes flicking to Eleanor. The appraisal was instant and dismissive. Eleanor did not look like she belonged in their world of soft, useless luxury. She looked like she worked. "This is Eleanor," I said. "She is a colleague. She was in the city, so I asked her to join." "How nice," Loretta said, the words meaningless. They all sat. Dax immediately reached for a sandwich, his eyes still scanning the room, calculating the nightly rate. Mara was furiously typing, no doubt posting her story before the moment's magic faded. "So," Loretta began, folding her hands on the table. She was radiating false concern. "Allison, darling, I am glad we have this moment. We were all so upset when you just vanished. That picture you sent. It was so hostile. It was a picture of mold." "Loretta," I said, pouring her a glass of water. "It was a picture of a basement," she corrected, her voice syrupy. "In an old house. You know, we were all just trying to make do. But that is not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about your grandfather." I sat back. I met Eleanor's eyes for a fraction of a second. She was perfectly still. "We are worried, Allison," Loretta continued, her voice dropping into a confidential, somber tone. "Deeply worried. You know we love him. He is not himself. He is getting so confused. He is having delusions." This was it. The script. The one I'd heard through the vent. The one they had been practicing. "Delusions?" I asked, my voice neutral. "He thinks people are after his money," she said, leaning in. "He is paranoid. He is forgetting things. He is delirium, darling. That is the only word for it, and that is why we had to step in." Dax, his mouth full of roast beef, nodded emphatically. "It is for his own good. Allie, he needs protecting from himself." "And that is why," Loretta said, placing her hand on my arm, "we are handling his affairs, the power of attorney. It is just a formality. It is just so we can make sure his bills are paid, that he is taken care of, that his legacy is protected." "His legacy," I repeated. The word tasted like ash. "Exactly," Dax boomed, swallowing. He was warming to the topic. He felt safe. He was in a penthouse. He was with family, and one negligible friend. He was among inferiors. "That is why we have to get this transfer done before Monday." The room went completely still. The quiet classical music seemed to swell. I saw Loretta's hand. the one on my arm, clench. Her nails bit into my skin. She shot Dax a look of pure, unadulterated fury. He had just gone off script. Eleanor, who had been staring at her water glass, looked up. Her expression was one of mild, polite confusion. "I am sorry," she said, her voice soft. "Transfer." "I must have misheard. It sounds like you are talking about a business deal." Dax, realizing he had slipped, tried to recover. He waved his hand, dismissive. "Oh, it is just family business. Paperwork, you know." Mara, however, saw no danger. She was still high on the penthouse, on her social media triumph. She rolled her eyes, annoyed by Eleanor's question. "It is the Kingsley Fund, obviously," she said, as if explaining something to a child. "Grandpa cannot manage it anymore, so we are moving it to Seabright. It is what is best." The admission hung in the air. "It is the Kingsley Fund. We are moving it to Seabright." The video was rolling. The audio was crystal clear. Dong dong. The soft, two-note chime of the doorbell. No one moved. They were all looking at me, confused. The lunch guests were here. "Excuse me," I said. I stood up. I walked to the door. My heart was not pounding. It was steady. It was a metronome. Drip, drip, drip. I opened the door. Walter Kingsley stood in the hallway. He was not frail. He was not confused. He was wearing a simple, perfectly cut charcoal gray suit, a white shirt, and a dark blue tie. His posture was perfect. He was 85 years old, and he looked like he could still command a shipyard. He held a simple, elegant fountain pen in his breast pocket. He looked at me. "Allison, Grandpa," I said, stepping aside. "I am so glad you could make it." He walked into the room. The effect was chemical. It was as if the temperature in the suite dropped 30 degrees. Mara's phone, which she had just raised to film the newcomer, clattered onto the glass table. Dax, who had been leaning back in his chair, sat up so fast he nearly choked. Loretta's face drained of all color. The mask of concern did not just slip. It shattered. What was left was raw, ugly, and terrified. "Walter," she gasped. What are you doing here? How did you get here?" Walter did not look at her. He looked at Dax. He looked at Mara. His gaze was cold and appraising. He walked to the head of the table, the seat they had all left empty, and stood there. "I was invited," he said, his voice the same one I'd heard on the voicemail, clear, measured, commanding, though I admit, I am surprised at the guest list. He turned his eyes to Loretta. She looked small, shrunken, her cashmere suit suddenly looking like a costume. "Loretta," he said, his voice quiet, but it cut through the room. "You were just telling Allison that I was having delusions, that I was, what was the word?" May sang, silence, absolute, crushing silence. The only sound was the faint click of Mara's phone as the screen locked itself on the table. Loretta's eyes darted from Walter, to me, to Eleanor. She was trapped. She was cornered. And like any cornered animal, she tried to change the attack. She burst into tears. It was a complete, theatrical pivot. Her face crumpled. Her shoulders shook. "Oh, Walter," she sobbed, rising from her chair. "You do not understand. You do not see. I just want to take care of you. I have been so worried. I am doing all of this for you, for the family." She reached for him, her hands outstretched, dripping with false diamonds and falser tears. Walter did not move. He did not flinch. He just watched her. I reached into my bag, which I had left by my chair. I pulled out a single, folded sheet of paper. I walked to the table, past the sobbing Loretta, and placed it on the glass in front of her. It was the photo of the invoice. "Then maybe you can explain this," I said. My voice was as quiet as Walter's. Loretta stopped crying. Her breath hitched. She stared at the paper, at the words, "Lake Row Notary Services," At the appointment time, Monday, 10 a.m., Dax stared at it, his face pale and slick with sweat. Mara looked at it, her mind finally, sluggishly, putting the pieces together. Walter reached into his pocket. He took out the heavy fountain pen. He clicked the cap off, a small, satisfying snick. He laid it on the table, the nib pointing directly at Dax. The microphone inside was live, recording every panicked breath, every stammer. "Yes, Loretta," Walter said, his voice dangerously soft. "Please, explain the paperwork." The air in the penthouse was stretched thin. Loretta's fake sob, caught in her throat, had frozen. Her hand still outstretched toward Walter. Dax was a statue of stale sweat and panic. Mara's eyes were fixed on the notary invoice, the simple black and white printout now looking like a death warrant. Walter's fountain pen, the one from his breast pocket, sat on the glass table, its nib pointed directly at them. The microphone inside was drinking in the silence. The silence was broken by the soft, two-note chime of the doorbell. Dong dong. Loretta flinched, as if a shot had been fired. Dax's head jerked toward the door. "I will get that," I said, my voice calm. "I am expecting one more guest." I walked to the door and opened it. Avery Knox stood there, looking exactly as I had hoped he would, like he did not belong. He was in a worn tweed blazer, jeans, and held a crumpled paper coffee cup. He looked like a harried academic, not a state forensic examiner. "Allison, hey," he said, giving me a quick, awkward hug. "Sorry I'm late. The traffic on the bridge was a nightmare. Did I miss lunch?" "Avery, perfect timing," I said, leading him in. "Everyone, this is my old friend, Avery Knox. Avery, this is my family, my aunt, Loretta, my cousins, Mara and Dax." No one said hello. They were staring at this new, unknown variable. "Hey, everyone," Avery said, giving a small, nervous wave. He turned to me. "So, I brought that thing you asked me to look at, that hypothetical document." He reached into his tweed jacket and pulled out a folded, official-looking document, stapled to a manila folder. "Oh, good," I said. "Eleanor, this is for you." Avery, playing his role perfectly, handed the file not to me, but to the lawyer. "You must be the attorney Allison mentioned. This is probably more for your records. It is the comparative analysis. It is pretty open and shut." "What is—" Dax snapped. His voice was too high. "Who the hell is this?" Eleanor Pike did not answer. She had unfolded the document. Her eyes scanned the page, her expression clinically neutral. "Thank you. Mr. Knox, this is exactly what we needed." She looked up, her gaze settling on Dax. "Mr. Knox works in the State Signature Verification Office. He has just provided a certified report." She turned the document around for all of them to see. Even from across the table, the red ink was visible. "The electronic signature used to open the Seabright Trust account," Eleanor said, her voice cutting through the room. "The one filed in Walter Kingsley's name has been officially flagged. It is a 100% mismatch to Mr. Kingsley's state-verified legal signatures. The report confirms it is, and I quote, a high-resolution scan and trace forgery, a Class B felony, I believe. The system has already placed a red alert on the account." Dax's face, which had been pale, turned a waxy, greenish white. That is not possible," Loretta stammered, her eyes darting between Walter and the report. "That is a lie, Walter. Walter wanted me to help. He gave me permission. He is confused. He does not remember." "Is that what he wanted, Loretta?" Eleanor Pike asked, her voice dangerously soft. She opened her laptop, the one that had been sitting dormant on the table. She swiveled it to face them. The screen was black, showing only a single file icon, basement-proof, MP3. "You seem very clear on his mental state," Eleanor said. "Let us see how clear you are on your own." She tapped the spacebar. The sound that filled the multi-million-dollar penthouse was not classical music. It was the sound of my prison, the low, hollow thump of the water heater, the relentless drip, drip, drip of the pipe, and then Dax's voice, captured in perfect, high-fidelity audio, booming with drunken arrogance. "It is absolutely foolproof. Loretta, I told you, Graham has the POA documents ready for Monday. Once Walter signs, it is done." "What is this?" Mara whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. "What is that?" "Dripping." Loretta's voice, sharp and conspiratorial. "Are you sure he will sign, Dax?" Laughing. "He will sign. You have been priming him for months, telling him he is losing it. He trusts you. He thinks you are the only one looking out for him. He will sign just to make you shut up, and as soon as he does, the Seabright Trust is activated. Under your control." I watched Loretta's face. She was not breathing. She was staring at the laptop as if it were a bomb. The recording continued. The final, fatal piece of evidence. Dax's voice, giddy with the score. "We are talking $1 billion, Loretta. Easy, $1 billion. The first thing I am doing is buying a yacht, a real one." Eleanor hit the spacebar again. The sound cut off. The silence that flooded the room was absolute. It was suffocating. The drip, drip, drip of the pipe seemed to echo in the vast, empty space, a ghost of their guilt. Dax looked like he was going to be sick. Mara was staring at her husband, her expression not of anger, but of pure, horrified disbelief. He was not the brilliant deal-maker. He was just a loud, stupid, greedy man. Loretta's head swiveled, slowly, until her eyes met mine. The performative tears, the false concern, the cashmere soft mask, it all burned away. Her face, in that instant, was something I had never seen. It was pure, unadulterated hatred. "You," she hissed. The word was a razor. She lunged, not at me, not at Walter. She lunged across the table at the laptop, her fingers splayed like claws, her face a mask of primal rage. "You spied on me." Eleanor snapped the laptop closed a fraction of a second before Loretta's nails hit the case. "You traitor!" Loretta shrieked, the sound tearing from her throat, raw and ugly. "You ungrateful, sneaking little bitch, we took you in. My sister died, and we took you in. We gave you a home, and you hide in the dark. You hide in our walls, and you spy on us." I did not move. I did not even flinch. I just stood there and let her words, her real words, hit me. Walter's voice cut through her scream. It was not loud, but it was final. "She did not hide. Loretta," he said. "You put her there." He paused, letting the words land. "She is not the traitor. You did not expose her. You exposed yourself." That was the blow that broke Dax. The entire construct of his life, the bonuses, the boat, the VIP lifestyle was vaporizing. I am not. I have to make a call," he stammered, shoving his chair back with a screech. The chair leg caught, and the heavy piece of furniture toppled over, crashing to the hardwood floor. He bolted for the door. He did not make it 3 steps. The door to the suite, the one I had opened, was now blocked by 2 men. They were large, wearing the impeccable black suits of the Riverview's executive security, but they stood with the rooted stillness of off-duty cops. "Mr. Voss," the taller one said. His voice was deep and polite. "We have been instructed by hotel management to ensure this meeting concludes without interruption. Please, return to your seat." Dax froze, his hand halfway to the doorknob. He looked from the security guards, to Walter, to Eleanor. He was trapped. He slowly, mechanically, righted his chair and sat down. Eleanor Pike stood up. She was no longer the quiet friend. She was the only one in the room with any power. "Please, remain seated," she said, her voice crisp and formal. "We have a few final items on the agenda. First, as of 8 a.m. this morning, I filed an emergency motion with the state court. A judge has signed a temporary restraining order and a full immediate asset freeze on all accounts associated with the Seabright Trust. The judge has also frozen all personal and business accounts belonging to Loretta Voss, Dax, and Mara. Your signatures are worthless. Your access is gone. Any attempt to move so much as a single dollar will result in an immediate contempt charge and custodial arrest. You cannot, Mara whimpered. The reality was finally cutting through her social media haze. You cannot do that. That is our money. That is family money. No, Mara, Walter said. He walked around the table and came to stand beside me. He placed his hand on my shoulder. It was a simple, solid gesture, a transfer of power. It is the Kingsley Charitable Trust, and it was meant for the family, to do good work, to build useful things for generations. You three saw it as a winning lottery ticket. You saw it as a yacht. His gaze swept over them. His eyes filled not with rage, but with a profound, weary disappointment. Which is why, he continued, effective immediately, I am activating the succession clause of the trust. I am stepping down as trustee. The board was notified this morning. Allison Barnes is the new, sole administrator and trustee of the Kingsley Trust and all its assets. That was the real blow. Not the police, not the asset freeze. Mara's face crumpled. This was the true, final humiliation. The basement dweller, the poor relative, the little non-profit worker. Me, I now controlled everything. No! She shrieked, jumping to her feet. The sound was high and thin. No, you cannot. You always loved her more. You always preferred her. She has been poisoning you. She tricked you. She lied. She did not have to, Walter said, his voice flat. I chose the person who builds affordable housing, not the one who dreams of luxury boats. I chose the person who understands what the money is for. I chose the person who, when locked in a cold, damp basement, does not panic, but listens. I choose people who respect boundaries. Mara, you do not even know what they mean. It was over. The great, violent heist they had planned was done. Eleanor Pike, her face impassive, picked up her personal cell phone. She hit a single number on her favorites list. This is Pike, she said, her voice all business. The meeting has concluded. The admissions have been recorded. The subjects are secure and cooperative. You can send the team up. She was not calling 911. She was calling the district attorney's office, the economic crimes unit that was already in the building, waiting. I took a half step back, receding from the table. My part was done. I was not the executioner. I was not the judge. I was the project manager, and this phase of the project was complete. The legal system could handle the demolition. I watched them. The three people who had, less than 24 hours ago, dismissed me as human refuse. They were not screaming. They were not crying. They were just broken. Loretta had collapsed back into her chair. She was staring at her hands, her face slack, the makeup running and pale, dirty tracks down her cheeks. Dax was sitting perfectly still, his jaw clenched, a muscle jumping in his cheek. He was staring at the wall, seeing, I imagined, the inside of a jail cell. And Mara, she was still standing, her phone on the table, her face a mask of hollow disbelief. The peak Thanksgiving story she had been filming was not the one she was getting. The hidden cameras in the penthouse were still rolling. They captured every second of the quiet, undignified, and absolute collapse of the Voss Hart family. The silence in the penthouse, after they were gone, was heavier than the noise had been. It was not a chaotic arrest. There were no sirens, no uniforms, no public humiliation. The men who had been waiting at the door were not hotel security. They were plainclothes detectives from the district attorney's economic crimes unit. They had escorted Loretta, Dax, and Mara along with their phones, which were politely but firmly requested down a private service elevator to a conference room on the third floor for preliminary questioning. Eleanor Pike closed the door. The heavy click of the lock echoed in the vast room. The only evidence of the confrontation was the overturned chair, lying on its side like a casualty, and Mara's abandoned phone, which had lit up and then gone dark on the glass table. Avery Knox, his role as the confused friend complete, had already given his statement to the detectives and quietly departed. Eleanor sat down. She looked at her laptop, her face impassive. "The district attorney's office," she said, as if dictating a memo, "is opening a formal investigation into conspiracy to commit wire fraud, fraudulent use of an electronic signature, and conspiracy to defraud a charitable trust. Your audio file, combined with Mr. Knox's report, gave them full probable cause to act immediately." Walter had not moved. He stood at the head of the table, his hand resting on the back of the chair. He looked at the half-eaten sandwiches. "They will be released tonight," he said. It was not a question. "Yes," Eleanor said. "They will be charged, likely by tomorrow morning, but they will be released on their own recognizance. This is a white-collar crime, not a violent one. The flight risk is low, especially since I have already frozen every asset they have. They cannot buy a bus ticket out of the city right now." The hotel manager called Eleanor's phone, not mine. His voice was polite, sanitized, and deeply concerned. He apologized for the unfortunate family dynamic and wanted to know if Mr. Kingsley's party required anything else. The hotel's discretion was absolute. As far as the Riverview Summit was concerned, a quiet family lunch had taken place, nothing more. When Eleanor had finished, Walter looked at me. The iron control he had maintained was gone, replaced by a deep, profound weariness that settled into the lines around his eyes. He looked, for the first time, like an 85-year-old man. "Allison," he said, his voice quiet, "let us have a proper Thanksgiving." He picked up the hotel phone. He did not order sandwiches. He ordered a small, roasted turkey, root vegetables, and a bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon. A private meal, no fanfare, no strangers, no pretense. We sat on the sofa, not at the glass table of interrogation. The sun was setting, and the city lights began to glitter, 48 floors below. We ate quietly, the food simple and warm. "You knew," I said, after a long silence. "You knew they were like this." Walter swirled the wine in his glass. "I suspected," he said, "which is why I became poor. It was the most effective test I ever designed. I sold the shipyards decades ago. Allison, the money has been sitting, growing, managed by people far smarter than me. But to the family, I was Walter, the old man living on a fixed income in an assisted living facility. Loretta was so kind, offering to help me with my bills. She never knew I was the one paying for her." He let out a long breath. "Greed is a simple enzyme. It is inert until it detects weakness. My poverty was the weakness. I watched how they treated you. Allison, you were the control group. You were the poor relation, just as I was. And you never asked for a dime. You built your own life. You built things that matter. They just saw two old, useless people standing between them and a yacht. The bluntness of it, the cold calculation, made my stomach tighten. But she is your family. She was my mother's sister. They are your grandchildren." I had to ask. The victory felt hollow, cold. "Are you not sad?" Walter looked out the window, at the vast, dark harbor. "I am sad," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "But I am not blind. Sadness is a feeling. Allison, blindness is a choice. I would be sadder if I had let them succeed. I would be sadder if they had taken the legacy your grandmother and I built and poured it into the ocean. All because I was too sentimental to see the truth." He turned back to me. "I am sad that I was right." The fallout began the next day. Thanksgiving Day. Eleanor called me in the morning. "Loretta is trying to fight back, as expected." "How?" "She hired Graham, the consultant. He filed an emergency motion to unfreeze her assets, claiming duress, coercion, and unlawful recording. He is trying to get the audio from the basement thrown out. Can he? No, Eleanor said, and I could hear the thin smile in her voice. He was arguing based on the assumption that you were the only one who recorded them. He had no idea about the other recording. The fountain pen, I said. The fountain pen, she confirmed. The one Walter was wearing, which recorded every word spoken in the penthouse. It was not a two-party consent state violation. It was Mr. Kingsley, in a private meeting, recording a conversation he was a part of. It is 100% admissible. I sent the transcript to Graham's office an hour ago. He has withdrawn his motion. The second wave of consequences was not legal. It was social. I logged into my social media, a morbid curiosity pulling me in. Mara had already posted. It was a black and white selfie, her eyes artfully blurred with tears. The caption was a masterpiece of narcissistic self-pity. My entire life has been turned upside down by people I thought were family. I am heartbroken. Never know who you can really trust. Sometimes the people you love the most are the ones who stab you in the back. The post had hundreds of likes, sympathetic comments. Stay strong, honey. We are here for you. Terrible. But then, I scrolled down. The tide was turning. The story she had posted yesterday, the one she had filmed with such glee, was still active on her profile. The first comment was sharp. Wait, is this the same family that you were with in the Riverview penthouse yesterday? That did not look like a stabbing. Another one, betrayed. Yesterday you were posting videos of a grand piano. I am confused. And a third, I saw that story. You looked pretty happy with your betrayal. What happened? Did they run out of champagne? Her own curated lie, her desperate need to show off, had become her own rebuttal. She had documented her own greed. She could not be the victim in the penthouse. The final call from Eleanor came just as Walter and I were finishing breakfast. Dax has been terminated, she said. What? His firm, the investment house he works for. They released a statement to their internal partners this morning. An employee, who they did not name, was terminated effective immediately for gross violations of the company's ethics and conduct code. The DA's office sent a courtesy notice to his firm's legal department last night, informing them their employee was the subject of a major fraud investigation. They did not wait. They cut him loose before the markets even open on Friday. Dax's bonus, the 6 figures, the yacht, it was all gone. The quiet in the room was absolute. It was a clean sweep. Walter, I said, turning to him. The children, Mara's kids, they are 10 and 8. They had nothing to do with this. I know, he said, his face grim. As my first act as trustee, I said, my voice hardening, I want Eleanor to establish a new, separate, firewalled educational trust. Use the Kingsley funds. It is to be for them, and them alone. Their parents cannot touch it. Their parents' creditors cannot touch it. It is to be managed by an independent third party. They will not suffer for this. That is not what this is about. Walter nodded, a look of profound relief on his face. That is the right move, Allison. That is precisely the right move. Eleanor, who was still on the line, agreed. I will draft the papers today. It is a wise precaution. She paused. And on that note, I have one more precaution for you. What is it? Loretta, Dax, Mara, they are not just angry. You have taken away their money, their status, and their future. They are desperate, and they are going to be humiliated when this becomes public. They will try to contact you. They will harass you. They will threaten you. I can handle them, I said. You should not have to, Eleanor replied, her voice firm. Tomorrow morning, Friday, I am filing for a temporary protective order on your behalf, a restraining order. It will legally forbid them from contacting you, your place of work, or Walter. It is just a boundary, a real one, with consequences. I looked at Walter. He nodded. A boundary. The one thing they never understood. The one thing that had cost them everything. Do it, I said. It was Thanksgiving morning. It was not. However, Monday, the appointment at Lake Row Notary Services, the one from the invoice, had been moved. Eleanor, with the full cooperation of the DA's office, had called the notary, Mr. Lake, and informed him of the situation. He was, to put it mildly, horrified. He was also incredibly cooperative. He agreed to call Loretta, claiming an urgent scheduling conflict had opened up his Thanksgiving morning. He told her if she wanted the documents signed before the long weekend. It had to be today. 10 a.m. Greed won. They could not wait until Monday. They wanted the signature now. So, at 9:45 on Thanksgiving morning, we arrived. The offices of Lake Row were sterile, quiet, and smelled of stale coffee and industrial carpet cleaner. Walter, Eleanor, and I sat on one side of a massive polished mahogany conference table. Avery Knox, looking even more rumpled and academic than the day before, sat beside Eleanor, a secure laptop bag at his feet. At 10 a.m., on the dot, the door opened. Loretta, Dax, and Mara entered. They were accompanied by their consultant, Graham. They looked terrible. They had clearly not slept. Mara's eyes were puffy from crying. Dax's suit was wrinkled, and his face was a pale, sweaty gray. Loretta was running on pure, frantic nerve energy, her hands clutching a thick leather portfolio. They stopped dead when they saw us. "Walter," Loretta breathed. Her face drained of color. "What? What are you doing here, Allison?" "I am here for my appointment, Loretta," Walter said, his voice calm. "As are you. I presume. Please, sit." They hesitated. A herd of deer that had just smelled the hunter, but they were trapped. Their lawyer, Graham, whispered something in Loretta's ear, and they slowly, stiffly, took the seats opposite us. Mr. Lake, the notary, entered the room, his face a mask of professional neutrality. "Good morning," he said. "We are here today to witness the signing of a full power of attorney, transferring all financial and medical authority from Mr. Walter Kingsley to Mrs. Loretta Voss." "That is correct," Loretta said, her voice shaking but determined. She slid the thick stack of documents, the POA they had drafted, across the table. "Walter, we just need you to sign, here and here." "Before we do," Eleanor Pike said, her voice cutting through the tension. The door behind her opened. The two plainclothes detectives from the DA's office entered, followed by a woman carrying a stenography machine. "This is now a formal proceeding. We are on the record." "What is this?" Graham snapped, jumping to his feet. "You cannot do this. This is harassment. This is a private family matter." "It stopped being a family matter," the lead detective said, "when you filed a forged electronic signature with the Seabright Trust. Please sit down. Mr. Graham." Graham sat. Avery Knox opened his laptop and connected it to the large monitor on the wall. "Mr. Lake, Mrs. Voss, my name is Avery Knox. I am with the State Signature Verification Office. We were alerted to a discrepancy in Mr. Kingsley's name." Loretta began to tremble. "He is confused. He is old. He does not sign consistently." "That," Avery said, "is false." He clicked a button. A high-resolution image of Walter's driver's license signature appeared. "This is the state exemplar. From 2 years ago." He clicked again. "His passport. From 4 years ago." Click. "His previous tax filings." A dozen signatures flashed on the screen, all identical, strong, and clear. "And this," Avery said, "is the forgery you filed with the bank." The sloppy trace signature appeared. It was a cartoon next to the real ones. "It is a 100% mismatch, a scan and trace. The narrative that Mr. Kingsley is confused, or confusion, is the legal basis for your POA, and that narrative is now, officially, debunked." Walter leaned forward. He picked up a pen from the table. With a hand that did not shake, he signed his name on a blank sheet of paper. The signature was perfect, identical to the exemplars. He pushed the paper toward Loretta. The detective stepped forward. In addition to the forgery, she said, we have several audio recordings. She played the first one, Walter's pen, the penthouse, Loretta's voice, sobbing. I just want to take care of you. I am doing all of this for you. My voice, quiet and cold. Then maybe you can explain this. The sound of the invoice hitting the table. The detective played the second file, the basement, the drip, drip, drip. Dax's voice, booming and drunk. $1 billion, Loretta, easy, $1 billion. The first thing I am doing is buying a yacht, a real one. Dax made a sound, a low, strangled gasp. He lunged to his feet, his chair scraping back. He pointed a shaking finger at Graham. It was him, he roared. It was his idea. He told us it was standard practice. He called it aggressive estate planning. He told us Walter was confused. He charged us $50,000 to guide the process. Graham, who had been pale, turned purple. I advised you on potential legal structures. I did not tell you to commit felonies. My consultation fee did not include accessory to fraud. You idiot. Your fee? The detective asked, turning to Graham. We would be very interested in seeing the invoice for that consultation. You will be accompanying us downtown. Mr. Graham, Mr. Lake, the notary, stood up. His face was rigid with professional fury. Lake Row Notary Services hereby refuses to witness these documents or any others presented by these parties. I am filing an immediate report of attempted notary fraud, conspiracy, and coercion of the elderly. This meeting is over. Get out of my office. It all unraveled in less than 5 minutes. Dax was cuffed. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, the detective said. Loretta and Mara were not cuffed. Not yet. You two, the detective said, will be coming with us. You will be processed, and a judge will determine the terms of your judicial supervision this afternoon. Loretta finally broke. The hatred, the greed, the arrogance, it all dissolved, leaving a pathetic, weeping core. No, please, she begged, looking not at the police, but at Walter. Walter, please, it is Thanksgiving. It is family. We can fix this. We can just handle this in-house. Please, Walter, do not let them do this. Walter looked at his sister-in-law. His face was a mask of cold, profound sadness. You had a choice, Loretta, he said. Every step of the way, you chose to lie. You chose to steal. You chose to lock my granddaughter in a basement. You already made your choice. You chose this. This is in-house. They were led out. The room was silent. Eleanor Pike turned to me. She opened her own briefcase, the real one. She pulled out a heavy, leather-bound portfolio and placed it in front of me. As of this morning, she said, the emergency board measure was ratified. These are the finalized, notarized transfer documents. You are now the sole, acting trustee of the Kingsley Charitable Trust and all its assets, effective immediately. I put my hand on the folder. It was warm. Walter stood up. He walked over to me. He reached into his pocket and placed something on top of the portfolio. It was not a pen. It was a single, black, weighted keycard. Loretta's house will be seized as part of the asset clawback to repay the state and Mr. Graham's fraudulent fees, he said. They will not be hosting Thanksgiving again. He tapped the keycard. The key to the penthouse. From now on, he said, we move the Thanksgiving table. We move it to floor 48. I went back to the penthouse. The wind was blowing through the open balcony door, and the air was cold and clean. I found a simple, elegant piece of hotel stationery. I picked up Walter's fountain pen. I wrote 7 words on the card. No more basements. For anyone. I stood on that balcony, 48 floors above the world. I looked at the city, at the harbor, at the people moving below. I took out my phone. I did not call the police. I did not call a lawyer. I called Miguel, my site supervisor for the Larkspur Affordable Housing Project. Miguel, happy Thanksgiving, I said. Yes, it is. It is a much better day today. Listen, I am at the Riverview Summit, in the penthouse, and I have ordered an obscene amount of food. Turkey, prime rib, everything, far too much for 2 people. I smiled, feeling the cold wind on my face. I want you to call the crew, call the drywall team, the electricians, the plumbers, everyone who worked that double shift last weekend. Tell them to clean up, grab their families, and get down here. Thanksgiving is on me. Floor 48. That afternoon, the penthouse was full. It was not full of strangers in polo shirts. It was full of working men and women, of their children, of people who knew what it felt like to be overlooked. It was loud, and it was warm, and it was real. It was a true reunion of the people who had been pushed to the basement in one way or another. I stood by the window, holding a simple glass of wine, and watched them laugh. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Walter. He was sitting across the room, watching me, a small, proud smile on his face. "The test is over. You passed. From now on, you have a voice. Use it to protect the vulnerable." I smiled back at him. This was not revenge. This was not a victory. It was a recalibration. I picked up the leather-bound portfolio. My first act as trustee. I found a blank directive sheet, and with Walter's pen, I signed my first official order. It was not a lawsuit. It was not an asset freeze. It was the creation of the Maria Kingsley Scholarship Fund, named for my mother, for women in structural engineering and urban development. The first grants would be awarded next fall. Later that night, I stepped into the elevator. The polished steel doors slid closed, silencing the party behind me, and for a moment, in the mirror-bright surface, I saw my reflection. I was not the girl on the cot. I was not the victim in the dark. I was the woman in the reflection. The one who had learned the rules, and who was now, finally, setting them. The penthouse was never the prize. It was the boardroom, and justice, I realized, was not about blind revenge. It was about building a better, stronger, and more just table, one that had room for everyone. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where in the world you are listening from. So please drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Make sure to subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, like this video, and if you want to support us, please hit that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.